Okay, so thanks, Bruno. Thanks for the invite. I'm happy to be here. I love London Clojurians. Watch like most of your talks. So I've done like a possibly foolish thing, and I've just the plan is to present the talk in the application UI itself. So hopefully that'll go well. So okay, so before I like really get into it, I just want to give credit to a couple of people. I want to thank Juxt. They have sponsored the development of Brimm since the fall of last year. It's pretty fair to say that Brimm would not be in the state it is today without their support, both like financially, but also Jeremy and Malcolm. Um, really, we had some really interesting discussions, and I think Brimm is the design of Brimm is much better for it. Secondly, I want to thank Sofia. Um, she's my friend, and she's like a brilliant UI designer. Uh, and she's been kind of discussing the project with me from the start. Recently, she was kind enough to do some parts of the UI design, like this nice logo. But like it's my fault, but she effectively worked like very little, and I hope we'll do more in the future. What we've come up so far, I really like. I feel like we've pushed the envelope a little bit. It's definitely something I want to do here with Brim. So just a little bit about the history. I started the project towards the end of 2020. Um, the the originating idea or the originating story is I use Notion pretty heavily, and as you do when you use something a lot, you can start seeing the cracks. Um, yeah. So I just wanted to, before I get to the cracks, I wanted to just kind of show like some things that I really like about Notion. So I have like a page here that's in Notion. I hope you can see it. So basically, like two really important things for me that Notion kind of pioneered, at least from my perspective, as far as I'm aware. They have this notion of your document um, being built up from blocks, right? Blocks that can take like different kind of formats. Like this block is a list item. This block is a toggle. This is like a call out. It has a little icon. You can have pages and stuff like this. So this is one part. The other part is what you see here is in Ocean you can have databases. Which is basically a way to just kind of input and query your structured data. So like every row here is a single entity. You have kind of multiple properties about the entity. Um, the properties different types. Like this is a checkbox here. You can have text. You can have select and stuff like this. We'll see this in Brim. So these parts of Notion I really enjoy. I think they're brilliant. Um, yeah, but things that I think are kind of fatal flaws is basically so first the page orientation is Notion is pretty much document oriented. I would say in that while the block is like a basic unit, it doesn't really exist. It doesn't have like an independent existence. The existence independent of the page it's in. So I cannot like zoom in here, and things you might be familiar with from Infinite Outliners. So that's one thing. The other thing is this kind of structured data here, structured input. You can only do for pages that live inside a database. So I cannot say like I don't know. I want to just mark this block as a to-do block or assign it to somebody. So that's another thing. And the third thing is you don't own your data. So basically, everything you do in Notion is stored on their clouds. I'm not saying that they're not good with your data. Just like if you have privacy concerns or you're a company and you cannot, store, you don't want your data to cross your company's boundaries, you might not like that. So at some point, I remember that I used to use Workflowy something like 10 years ago. In my head, Workflowy is the OG of infinite outliners. Um, and if you're not familiar with infinite outliners, what it means is that a block is a basic unit, so I can zoom into any block I want here. So it really blocks kind of exist just kind of independently. So that's the basic premise. Take what I liked about Notion and just put it in a much more flexible architecture. So when I started working on Brimm, I was not aware of any apps like this. In the meantime, there have been movements. I think like the app Tana is pretty great. Also has some downside, like it's you don't own your data. Logseek is also pretty great. It's open source, local first. So yeah, definitely check it out. Um, and when I started working on Brimm, when I was trying to imagine how to actually implement it, I was from the start. It was clear to me that SQL is not a good idea to base this project on. And I did some research, and that's when I discovered graphs, data log, particularly in Clojure, and the close richness of data log, graph-like databases. That's a revelation. So here we are, several years later, several frameworks tried, prototypes, and everything later. I tried all the data log Clojure databases and stuff like this to like kind of arrive at this point. I'll be talking more about the tech stack later. So as far as project goals and themes, like on a basic level, what Brimm is it's a full stack web application. There's a database server and there's like a default UI on top of that database server, is what I'm showing you now. You own your data and the full stack, so you run the database server on your own machine. I mean, you can host it if you want to, or you can use. I'll talk about this later, and it's also going to be open source. I'll talk about all of this later. One goal is to default to things people are familiar with, so like documents and outliners. Go beyond them. It'll become clear when we dig into the UI what I mean by this. I think there's plenty of space to improve the UIs of note-taking apps. Another kind of loosely formulated goal is documentation, messaging, and project management in a single application. Another is leaning into the graph-based structured data. So if you have this kind of graph structure, like what I was showing you before, where you can kind of model your entities, what properties they have, and everything like this. It's really interesting for me to think about all the kinds of applications and interfaces that this could be used to support, and we could achieve this. So one of the goals is to think about having entities of many shapes, many types. Um, Another thing is if we introduce queries or like material views into the picture, I think you can get pretty far just in terms of the UI, like not, for Reddit or Twitter, you need, the backend has to be crazy to scale and everything. I'm not claiming that. But just in terms of the UI, like Reddit is basically a graph. It's definitely like a tree-like structure. Twitter as well. You have you have your tweets and some properties on the tweets. And so I think it would be it's pretty interesting to me to think about how we can how we can lean into the graph. Right. So another thing is due to this full stack architecture, is thinking about using Brimm as like a personal or a team database. So you have you own your server, you own your data, and you can use the default UI that you see here. You can use it to for like administration or data management. Then you have your own data. You can maybe build a static site generator on top of it. Maybe you want to like generate the blog from Brim data. Maybe you just want to build a custom UI for event scheduling that you will then expose on the web. I think when we lean into the graph, we can start thinking about achieving all of these things. This is like a long-term goal. It's not close. Just kind of, cold shower if you're getting excited. Another goal is collaboration. I'll be demoing like a basic proof of concept of collaboration. Um, the UI should be user friendly but hackable, which means if you've used Notion or one of the outliner tools, you should be able to use Brim, but you should be able to like go beyond those. And then, importantly for this audience, I really took my time in trying to design a data model that is simple and that can play well with Clojure data. I would say it's pretty idiomatically Clojure, so that we can start thinking about, you can maybe include Brim as just like a WebSocket endpoint on top of your FTDB database and then do stuff from there. I'll talk some more about this, and we'll do like a data model breakdown. Okay, so basic concepts. So I'm just going to kind of run through those because we'll be reinforcing those as part of the UI tour. Basically, basic concepts, properties. Uh, for this audience, you can think of them as keys in a map. The most important thing about properties is prop types, which basically determine the kinds of values they store. So prop types determine the data, how the data is stored, how the user interacts with this data, how it's inputted, how it's modified, and the kind of queries you can build. We'll see all of this. Blocks are the kind of, I would say, like the basic units in the UI or like in the data model, but it's basically just a container for props and their values. There's just nothing really special about blocks beyond that. You just a container you attach properties and values to. There's some UI shenanigans, and we'll get to those. And block types, I mean, they're kind of like map schemas, but not really. I think of block types as inherent categories of entities, so like a person or an album or a bookmark. That's like an inherent category of thing. They might all have specific shapes, specific properties. And we'll get to that. And one thing to keep in mind, another thing to keep in mind about block types is they kind of serve as blueprints for creating instances of these types. That's right. So we'll not do the UI tour. Hopefully nothing blows up. So let's see here. Let's start with a simple example. So I'm just going to create a new block here just to play with. So just to make sure. So I created a new block and then I'm zooming into it, right? So you can kind of see the breadcrumbs here. And so the most important thing to note here is blocks have certain properties on them. By default, each block, going back to the default to the outliner story, by default, each block has like a text property, which you can like think of as a title of a block, or if it's a paragraph, just a paragraph text or a list item text or whatever. And you can also have it also has a blocks container which you can use to make more blocks. So if I like you should be like, if you used outliners before, they should be pretty familiar. Like what I'm doing now, just kind of creating blocks, moving them around, nesting them one on top of the other. So yeah, this is basically what I call the prop table of a block, and this block has two properties on it, and the properties can have, like as I said, many types. This is a rich text type property, so I can like make it a heading or not, so I can do full closure, whatever, right? So this is a property that stores rich text. You can link to other blocks from these properties and all the stuff you might be used to from outliners. Right. So the prop type blocks uh, stores other blocks as its value, So like these two blocks are stored in this value of this block. Um, yeah, so that's kind of the breakdown. We'll see more examples, so maybe maybe it will coalesce eventually. So let's add a new property to this block. So if you remember, like one of my goals with Notion is like I want to be able to just take any block from here. I'm using this one, and I want to add whatever property I want to it. So I can add, like there's a bunch of existing properties here, but let's add a status property, and this property is a property of type select, and it basically just contains a enumerated values, some predefined set of values it can take. So let's just like mark this block as to do. Okay, so that's like adding a new property. We can maybe inspect these properties. So let me make this bigger. So like we can open this property in the side panel, so we can kind of see the. Oh, right. So properties exist independently of blocks, so you can create them. Um, you can create them just by themselves and then attach them to blocks. Um, they have a type. You can give them a name. You can give them a description, and you can, depending on their type, there might be other options. Like in this case, you can define this enumerated set that you can use then in other blocks. So that's like one part of the UI is this side panel here, and we are in the props tab, which you can use to inspect all the properties you have in Brimm. Okay, so now I want to do like a longer example that will showcase everything. So let's see. Let's go back here. I'm going to actually no. So yeah, I want to create like a new type. So as I said, types are kind of like inherent categories of entities. I want to model an album, like a music album, right? So I'm going to create a new type here. I'm going to name it album. I'm going to say music recording as a description. And we have the prototype. You can kind of disregard this for now. Prototype is really just a block that serves as a blueprint. So like when I create an instance of this album type, the blocks will be created according to this blueprint. So it'll be clearer in a second. So for the albums, I don't actually want any of these properties. I'm going to create a bunch of new properties. So let's see here. Like an album I want a title, right? The UI is too big. It's okay. Never mind. So let's say we'll call this rich text, and we're going to create this property. Then add one, the author of the album. It's going to be again rich text. So yeah. So here you would type in like this would be album title, and this would be author, right? And there's going to be an album cover. So this is going to be an image, actually. So these are the currently available property types. It's going to be an image here. We're going to create that property. This is the kind of the bad UI, currently the bad UI widget for this property type. I'm going to want the release date of the album. It's going to be a date. And I'm going to want songs in an album, right? So this is going to be other blocks. And I want to have an album review. It will be clear what it is in a second. So I kind of created, so these are newly created properties. This is kind of the workflow. You can create properties from blocks themselves, or you can create them from the side panel. So back to modeling our album. Let's see, what else do I need? Oh, I did want to, since we're going to have songs here, I just wanted to just as a visual separator, I'm going to create a song block type. I'm just going to add an emoji to it, just to be like a visual differentiator from other blocks. I'm not going to be dealing with song more than that. So going back to the album, so now we have the blueprint, we have the prototype, so we can now create our album. So going back here, okay, what's happening here? I know I painted myself into a corner. Let's see. Okay, I'm just going to do this. I'll get to this. What's happening here is what I actually want to do here is there is an option for blocks, block types. You can choose what kind of block types the blocks. Yeah, what kind of blocks types it will contain. So for this property, I want only songs, so that when I go back to the albums and I click, it automatically creates a song block, right? So this is just going to be some song here. Okay, and this is actually what's happening here because I kind of created this for the slides. So let me just add this. So I can just create, right? So let's create an album. Okay. Okay, we created an album, and it's kind of we see that it's been instantiated from this blueprint, right? We have the same properties. Okay, so let's actually make an album. So let's do the Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. We can do an album cover. So I'm going to upload a album cover here. So this is an image prototype, so it displays the image when it's uploaded. This is a date. The release date is this is the release date and song. So let me move this on there's classic songs like Money and Time and Breathe, and we don't have to do all of them, right? So now we've kind of inputted the data for this particular instance of a block type. Now I kind of want to use this to talk more about the different parts of a block in terms of the UI. So this is the basic thing. You have a block, you add properties to it, and block specific values, right? But beyond that, we kind of there are some UI shenanigans you can do. So first concept I want to discuss here is block layout. So I'm going to do this. You can change this stuff on the block level or on the type level. Sorry. But I'm going to do this on the type level, and it's going to be synchronized with block level. So block layouts. Basically, what block layout is let's see here. Like you know, it's going to be easier to do than discuss it. So I'm going back to our album. And I'm just going to say, like, from the properties I have a block, I want to lay them out, the property cells, in a specific grid configuration, right? So I want to do, let's say, I'm going to have album cover here. We can have, let's say, album title, and album cover, and then maybe album author, right? So if we kind of close this, so this is the block layout. It looks kind of wonky. This part of the UI is not finished and it needs some polish, but it's basically what you see here. I've created a grid. First column in the grid is the album cover prop. The second column, the first row, is the album title, then the album author, right? So that's block layout. If I like show you another example, let's see here. So like this is a message block. It has the block layout where this is, the user that created the message and the name of the user, the date the message has been created in, and then message text here. So basically, the idea is like you can kind of scan it here. You can have multiple layouts, so different types of layouts for blocks, and you can define them yourself, right? So this is what we've done here. I didn't want to like reiterate. This is like the ground truth, and this is just like a UI thing that you use to shape the different types of entities you might want to have in your application. Okay. Another part of the UI for the block is pin properties. So this is basically what you see here. It might be like easier to show, like what you see. Let's see, like here. Okay, for this block, this strip is the what I'm calling pin properties strip. Probably should have a better name. But basically, this block has some properties, right? And you can choose what kind of properties, which properties to display in this pin property slot. It's very useful for, if you have like, if I take this paragraph here, I can add a status and to do, and it's like a very nice visual representation that this paragraph block is now marked it as to do. Okay, so let's go back to our album. So in this case, the date property is pinned automatically. I can remove that. So because there's like, let's say, no need here. This kind of looks nice. Let's see other stuff I can show you. Yeah, there's things like icons and block colors, but that's not that important right now. There's like the title prop. If you notice here, the title of this block is kind of weird, right? This is just like base VDID, and I can choose what kind of what to use, which property to use as the block title. In this case, it obviously should be the element title. Okay. Let's see what else I want to show you. Okay. So next concept is okay. So I've added this album review, and it's basically just a way to showcase. Let's say I want to, I'm keeping a journal of the albums I'm listening to, and I want to, besides this data, I want to include like a personal review. So I can do something like, sorry, so do something like my review here. And then I can just write pretty great album. And I mean, you can do whatever here. You can add like more headings and stuff like this. Doesn't matter much. So I have this property on this album which contains my review. This is like how you would like this is a block, right? So this is a block. This contains blocks. So I can zoom into it, of course. And this is kind of a way you would write your a document, right? So this, a paragraph of text, one paragraph of text after the next. And the final thing, about the UI I want to show is, so for the standard outliner, approach is you have your text of a block, right? And then you have blocks that are nested within it. So like this block is nested within this block, right? So I can toggle it off and on, right? I can expand it and collapse it. So let me go back to the dark side of the moon. So basically, one like straightforward generalization of how things work in standard outliners is that I can choose which properties to show like build when you expand the block. So let me just again a case of it's going to be easier to show than to do. Than to explain. So I'm going to say folding props. That's the concept name. Again, maybe a bad name. Folding because they fold as you expand and collapse the block. So basically, so I want to do album review and then album songs here. No. So when I like open the block now, what I see here, well, I actually let me do it differently. I just have songs here. Like I just see a list of songs nested inside this block, just as I see things nested within other blocks, right? But then I thought like, why limit yourself? And for albums in particular, I just thought it would be nice to like see a document like structure where you have a review on the top and songs on the bottom. So that's what you can do. Sorry. So like you can do this here, right? So, so you can have your review, and then you can have your songs below it, and when you close the block, you just get this nice view. You can edit stuff. You can continue editing stuff here if you want. You can close this block, another blocks, add new songs here. What's another song? The Great. Let's not. The Great in the Sky. It's a classic album. There are a lot of classic songs. So anyway, okay, so that kind of takes care of properties of blocks and types. So, if I'm going too fast, maybe somebody can let me know in the chat, so maybe I can slow it down. But anyway, next concept I want to show is queries. So the idea is basically that at any point in your graph, at any place in your graph, you want to be able to query for blocks across your whole graph, right? So if I now do, I'm going to have the same problem here again. Now let's see. Okay, let me fix this. Oh, I'll just do whatever. Okay, I'm going to go into this block. Okay, so I'm going to create a query block. This is just a property, a block type that is kind of comes with Brimm. It's just kind of an easy way of creating queries. But it's basically, again, just properties and their values. So I can do the title of the query, and I will create some views. So I'll warn you that this part is pretty unpolished. So sorry for the unpolished state of the UI. So basically, the idea is that you can have different kinds of layouts. And views are a concept that groups the layouts and the queries. So let's, again, case of it's easier to show than to explain. So I'll just I can query for our albums, like, right. So this is, you can query by some kind of special kind of things about blocks by block properties and some kind of system properties. In this case, I just want to like show me all albums that are in my graph, right? I've created a query here. Again, this is kind of a horrible UI for now, but we get the return is a single block. If I can like add more columns to this table, right? I can sort. There's like the concept of pages, whatever. But basically, this is the idea. You create queries and you query for blocks across your graph. Let's do a more interesting one. So let's do all. I think messages are good. So like no, okay. So let's do. I want to find blocks that have like their to do, right? This I have the status here for the table. So we get back a list of all the blocks that are marked as to do in our graph. These query results are like automatically refreshed. So if I change the status of this message, it'll be gone from the view, right? So like yeah, I can like paging, I can demo the paging this because there's more results. And I think, oh right, another thing I wanted to show is there's like this kind of primitive UI query builder, UI for query building. So I can add more stuff here. I can do, I don't know, maybe like just messages. Let's see, messages, blocks which are type messages. This status in them. I can do multiple statuses and all of these things, right? And just the final thing about queries. Well, there's actually two things. So this is a way to create queries anywhere in your graph. So, like as you saw, I just ad hoc created a couple of new blocks to store these views and queries in, right? So that's one way of doing that. The other way is let me showcase. Well, maybe no. We won't have time for all that. I just wanted to like final thing about queries is you can switch like continuing the theme of being hackable. You can switch to like even representation of the query that produced these results. If you switch back to the query builder UI, it will clear the query. So it only goes one way for now. But anyway, this like needs to be properly formatted, right? So you cannot really see what's happening. But let's write our own query. Hopefully you're familiar with data log. So like we can do give me all blocks that. Well, we don't even have to query for blocks. We can like query for props, right? So we can maybe do give me all entities that have this attribute on them, right? And now the query runs, and we get a list of all of our properties. If I wanted to do maybe something more visually appealing, I think this is the idea, right? So you can write your own queries if you want to. This is basically a query of all blocks that have some kind of status on them. Okay. Continuing the theme again of being hackable, I just wanted to showcase some proof of concept properties. So right, so this is what I wanted to show. Bookmarks. Again, I'll not go into this. This is just like a query of all the bookmarks in across my graph. Bookmarks again are a special property type. They have their own kind of block layout here, which you can see. There's like a bookmark. There's different properties and stuff like this, right? So like let's create a new bookmark. It kind of looks bad right now. But what I want to show is being able to like use Psi to write custom scripts that you can run on the backend. This is badly formatted. I apologize for this, but what it's going to basically what it does is I'm going to enter a URL here, and when I press run, this script is going to do an HTTP request on the server side for this URL and just kind of create populate all the bookmark data here, right? So this is all the data we get for Wikipedia. We have the title, description, and there's like an icon here, right? So that's like one way of like being hackable, extending, going beyond like what currently is available in the UI. But again, this is kind of just a proof of concept for now. Another example of using Psi is if we go to this block here. This kind of has a lot of properties, but basically there's a first name property, right, which is just text, and there's a last name property, which is just text. And here I can again write a Psi script. Well, I probably should have said Psi is like a sandbox for running Clojure code. So you basically just write your Clojure code here. And in this case, we basically just get the first name value of the block and the last name value of the block, and we produce a full name string. So if I now change the full name, if I change the last name, the full name changes accordingly. So another like kind of hacking things, introducing formulas, being able to derive so that you don't have to write every property value by hand. You can write like a script that will just produce derive values from already existing values, like first name and last name here. Okay. Another thing about the UI is what you've seen before, this kind of full text search component. Basically, it's a full text search, so it both searches through blocks. So like here I will get I changed the last name, but it matches against the URL of the image of this Paul Atreides here. But I also will search through properties as well and block types. So if I do like recording, I think I have here, it matches against the block type. And if I click on this now, it will open the in the side panel. It will open the type which I matched by. Again, the UI here is pretty incomplete. Will be improved. Okay, so this kind of a full text search, and yeah, it's meant to like be a quick jump to style kind of thing. So if I just want to jump to Dark Side of the Moon, it's as easy as that. Okay, so now I want to showcase the collaboration features. They are very basic and kind of proof of concept stage, but I thought it would be kind of cool to showcase them. So I have to like switch now to sharing the full screen. Fine. So I'm just going to open a new tab here. I'm going to connect to the same database that is running this UI. It's an incognito tab, so I'm going to be logged out or not. Okay, let's log out. Sorry. So you would see this. There's like a basic authentication mechanism. It's completely in control of the owner of the database. So you can, again, the UI is pretty bad. There's a root. Every new database has a root user, and the root user can add more users. So I can now sign in as Sofia here. Okay, so now we can see here. There's like a little bit of you can see that Sofia is connected, right? And for collaboration, I want to kind of showcase, like, one of the themes, as I said, is modeling different kinds of data. And one of the things, one of the examples for this is modeling messaging. So messages in Brimm are basically just blocks, right? So, and that was important to me because I wanted messages to also, you can add properties to messages as you can to any other block, right? So, right. So I've just added a new message to this block. You can add a message to any block, right? So I can just do like hey here, and again, messages kind of there's the user that created it, the time of creation, and the message text. Again, leaning into the graph and block thing, we basically get threads for free, right? And then for collaboration, what I wanted to do is, let's go to again the website. Moon here, we can see that the backend syncs between users, and then I can another message here, right? And that is synced to the other user. And again, this is like, so Sophia sent this message, and that's the idea. For messages, again, you kind of reusing the same concepts. There's you can view all messages in your across your graph. So this is just like a built-in, again, not a very good UI, but they're sorted by the date of modification. We can see the last couple of messages here, and you can, it's a query. So if you want, you can change this query if you like. So that's that. Okay, so I'm going to switch back. So I think, okay, there's also, like, again, at a proof of concept stage, these outlining apps have this useful notion of associating a block with a day. So Brimm has this as well. Again, it's not a special thing. It's a block type. You can change it, and you can and basically, for every day you get a block. Let me go back to this day. So these blocks by default come with some default blocks in them, and I kind of set them up in such a way that you have your space for like just adding daily notes, right? And again, these are just blocks, so you can open them here if you want to get like a better overview. But it's daily notes, and also there's you can have like a query block here. So I've set it up here that there's like a query that looks for blocks that are due within this date, the dates in the calendar. Again, kind of proof of concept, but it will be improved. So I think that that concludes the tour part of the talk. So let's continue on. Okay. So the data model, as I said, I kind of want it to be fairly Clojure and idiomatic. So we're going to take a look at. So this is like the tech part of the talk. So we're going to take a look at just like how this block here, this block here that has these two properties and these values, how it's actually modeled in data. So this is the Eden of the block, right? One thing to note is this is practically the only limitation, let's say, of using XDDB for the database. Your documents need to have an XDID key on them, but the type of the key can be UID, it can be keywords, maps, and strings, and it's pretty flexible. Okay, I want to direct your attention to these four properties. These are system properties that are automatically added by Brimm. to all documents, basically when a block was created, who created it, who modified it, and when. These are just properties, right? There's a this key here. It basically just references the type of block, and there's some kind of tracking of what the prototype this block was created from. But yeah, and then there's this key here, which is a just a UI related stuff. I just wanna okay, and then we have some properties like for this property here, this text, this block's Eden. We can see it here. We can see it here. So it's basically just it's a key and then the value. So it's very idiomatically Clojure. Or like for slide blocks here, which like it's a property of type blocks and contains this block here. This is modeled as just a vector of block IDs, right? So just a vector. So XDDB, like by default, will index vectors and sets. Cardinality many values, right? So this will be properly indexed, but nested maps will not be indexed. So this block UI will not, like this UI specific data will not pollute your indices, and I kind of tried hard to to make it so. So you have only stuff that are necessary. I mean, this is like a UI only key. This will not be transacted into the database. This is like a back reference. Again, it's a purely UI only key. So basically, you just have your properties like these six. These are the system properties. These are the two properties you see above. We can show the system properties as well. And then there's some like block type and stuff like this. So block type is going to be indexed, and this is useful because you want to query block types. This stuff you don't want to query, and this will not be indexed. You want to make meaningful connections between various blocks. So this connection will be indexed and will be accessible to your queries. You can traverse forward and backwards through the graph. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so one thing to note here is that the property IDs. So properties are just like documents in the database, and their IDs need to be keywords. That's a limitation because these keywords are used as as keys in block maps, right? And it basically does that. So if we take a look, let's see. Let's go back to our dark side of the moon here, and let me check out the Eden here. So if you remember, we created all these properties, right? And you can see we can use valid Clojure keywords. So this is the idea of, you should be able to work with your data outside of Brimm, and it should make sense. So, I mean, this is kind of, as idiomatically Clojure as you can get it, I think. So it's basically prop ID and then the value for this block. Again, the specific value shapes are determined by the different block types. So this is like an instant here. These were, songs were other blocks with just a vector of IDs. An album cover just stores the path to the image that was uploaded, and so on. So let me go back. Another thing is, so if you have a block that has no, well, what do you do when you have keys in your block maps that are not registered as properties inside of Brimm, right? So like here we see that we have a property text, our usual property, and since this is a property registered with Brimm, this is a rich text property, we can do stuff, right? But these keys in the in the block map are not registered as properties, and currently we just display them as hidden. We can do maybe some fancy stuff here, like do inputs. Like if I see a string here, maybe I should display an input field for the value. But currently, you just get a read-only hidden kind of stuff. And I just wanted to do like a funny thing here. It's funny to me. So since you can on the full text search, you can search for blocks, properties, block types, and users. So if I go to the user now, this is not a block really, but you can view its hidden, and you can see the password of the root user. So this is obviously not good. This is something I have to fix. Again, we'll talk more about this. I mean, the collaboration part, like sharing your database, it's proof of concept. You share your entire database with the users you're sharing them with. So there is an assumption currently that if you are going to be using it this way, it's going to be a small group of people you trust, right? So there's no beyond authentication. There's no access control, filtering of property visibility based on users and roles and permissions. None of that is currently available. Okay, so let's continue on. So tech stack. So it's a full stack app. The backend database is XTDB. The server library used is Pedestal, though I mean it can be swapped out if for any other Ring compatible thing. I think without issue. As you've seen, we're using Psi. I want to give a shout out to Mulog by Bruno, which is an excellent logging library. And ShadowGrow is used to build the UI front end framework. So I just want to spend some time. I just want to quickly go why XDDB. Basically, it satisfied all the requirements. As I said, I tried all the Clojure databases. At the moment I made this decision, Datomic was not, free use. It's not open source, but it's free to use. So I didn't really consider it. But again, I don't think even the Datomic satisfies all of these requirements. But the basic requirements is flexible data modeling, both to get it to be, idiomatically Clojure, and also schemaless or flexible enough to support this kind of a thing where the user is the one creating all the schema, the properties, the blocks. And so being XTDB being schemaless by default is a big deal for this. It has the data, you can query it by data log, so that's great. It has full database history, so it will store all the previous versions of your documents, which will eventually be exposed through the UI. I think that's kind of great. You can go back in time and see the previous document histories, and it has a very nice integration with Lucene for full text search, which I've showcased. This thing we already went over this. A minor trade-off with XDDB, which is storage space. So XDDB is document oriented. So unlike Datomic, you transact whole documents each time. There's no there's no separation into individual datums for transaction purposes. So I think XDB is kind of it kind of uses more storage space, which is fine because this is kind of mostly meant as a local first thing for now. And besides, storage is cheap, so having your database take up more space is not that big of a deal. Especially it's a worthy trade-off when you consider all of these things here. But it still would be great to be more efficient with respect to document updates. The history of the documents. I have some ideas about the document history, So we'll see. That's something for the future. So XDB, great, highly recommended. It's a fantastic database. Like I would say, especially like the schemaless part, when you're just starting out, like modeling your data, it's very good. It's very easy to use. It's very like it's basically you're just working with Clojure maps. So that's great. Shadow Grow is, as I said, the UI framework. It's kind of newish and not as well known in the community, which I think we should definitely remedy and like embrace as a community. It's created by Thomas Heller, which should be like Shadow CLJS, should be familiar with everybody for everybody here. Some general notes about Shadow Grow is that it's built on it's pure Clojure and Clojure script, so there's like no React dependency. Thomas did like coded everything, syncing to the DOM, maintaining the DOM, updating the DOM, everything like that. So there's no React, which is, again, it's a trade-off. It's protocol based, it's pretty extensible, it's very nice to use. It has a simple to use normalized database, which is like very important for a project like this. It has EQL queries, but it's not like full Crow if you're familiar with where you construct your queries from the top, from the root of your UI, you can do component level queries. And it's very efficient in terms of UI rendering. So I would say it's more in line with Svelte and solid JavaScript frameworks, but it's still, functional. I mean, functional in the sense of functional programming. I do have like a minor fork of Shadow Grow, which I added some like really minor things that enable me to do some cool things. One thing we didn't show, which I'm kind of proud of. Let's see, what's the best way to showcase this? So, I don't know, maybe you've noticed. So if we just add a new block here and add status to it here, like you get these little counters of the statuses of blocks within a block, and this goes all the way to the top, right? So I think this is one example of this is one opportunity to improve upon the on the UI of Infinite Outliners, and I really like. I'm proud of this. Um, I'm proud of this, and this is enabled by my Shadow Grow work. You just kind of get automatic management of back references and stuff like this. I don't want to waste more time talking about this now. If you're interested, contact me. And I'm going to skip the notes because I think pretty long. We're running out of time, definitely. So the current state. Um, my approach has been, breadth first in terms of design and programming and using 80% solutions. And as a consequence, there's, a lot of polishing to do to make it, more user friendly. So I would say that, yeah, so I really wanted to open source and release an alpha in like conjunction with this talk today. But I mean, the UI is not quite there, so I'm postponing this. It's almost there in terms of it's really just a matter of polishing like UI widgets for property types, and so I think like another month or two will just make a huge difference, and I think then we'll be ready for like a wider release and for you to use on a day-to-day basis. One part is that I think it's quite important to get the data model um, as much as possible right uh, from the get-go. So that's kind of I've spent a lot of time, thinking about the underlying data model design and stuff like this. So the alpha to be released will be focusing on the UI. So all the talk about having your web backend, using it as like a graph content management system. It's not really there yet in terms of I'm not providing any APIs for you to insert and extract data outside of this UI. This is something I do want to do, but it's not there yet. I will say though that you do own your data. So, I mean, if you're a Clojure programmer, you can build a UI on top of the data you do insert from here because you can use the database. You can access the database from other libraries or code bases. So like one idea would be to use Jacob's BIF, which is a full stack framework that is also built on top of XDB. So that would be kind of a neat idea where you might use Brimm to manage your data, input your data, and then you might use BIF to create a completely separate UI on top of your data. And yeah, if you still want to, like, if you still have the binaries, it's not open sourced yet. But if you really want access with all these caveats, reach out and we'll figure something out. Long term, just like a list of things I'd like to do. After the alpha is done, data export and import from other tools is pretty important for interoperability. As I mentioned document history already. I mean, exposing the document history in the UI. Make the backend more robust for collaboration and sharing purposes. The backend API I've already discussed. And an interesting idea is, since we are dealing with this kind of structured data, is to use existing ontologies. So like schema.org has a schema for album entities. And it would be pretty sweet to import that schema and like model it as Brimm props and Brimm blocks. So you just kind of don't have to build this yourself. But what we did with the album example, it would be kind of cool to just kind of import into Brimm and just start using it immediately. So just a note here that while I do have a sense of where I'm going in the future, I am very interested to hear what the community would prioritize, what they feel is missing, what should be added. So feel free to reach out. You can use the Brimm channel on the Clojurians Slack for that. And finally, just a note about sponsoring. So for this kind of project, I think open source and ownership of the full stack and your data is very important. If we're talking about personal or team knowledge management, especially in like long-term applications, like these kind of rich applications have been around enough that people have already kind of become allergic to switching. It'll be good to have something that could work, that have like a long shelf life. And I think ownership of your data and the stack is pretty crucial for this. So yeah, you can, when it's open source, you can modify the source to suit your needs. And then I think it'll help with building like an extension, custom UI ecosystem around the common data model that is found in Brimm. So just to conclude, so as I mentioned, I've been working like several years on this, much of it full time, and like that, I really like to continue working on it, and at this full time pace. But the only way that's going to happen really is, if to find some funding. As I mentioned, Jack has been very, very kind to fund a part of it. But yeah, if you want to contribute, if you like what you see and you kind of see potential in this, consider sponsoring the project here on GitHub. And yeah, that's it. Thank you for your attention.